Should be something number 4 says the educated individual today is the most dangerous individual on earth. This came with a link that takes us to Twitter. This comes from our friend Afro Native. He says Amos Wilson states these points on Eurocentric education versus Afrocentric education, and the latter's most importantly, including it a spiritual and ethical component. The Eurocentric educated individual today is the most dangerous individual on earth. Educated human beings. He goes on to say, today are twisted and distorted, and they represent the greatest danger to life. When this world ends, if it ends, it will not be brought to an end by murderers. Think he meant this, though sounds like mothers, but by rapists, by robbers, by dropouts. It will be brought to an end by PhDs. It will be brought to an end by people who have clipped lawns, little lovely kids, and 2-car garages. It will be brought to an end by the pillars of society who go to church, who vote, who are concerned with the Board of Education, who will also go to work and design bombs, and will design all kinds of offensive and defensive weapons. Doctors who will design germ warfare, botanists who will design biological warfare to destroy crops, psychologists who will design methods to destroying people's minds, sociologists who will determine how you could destroy a society and its values. So the thing we must recognize is that education in a Eurocentric society is an education for war, and every discipline is a part of that war effort. Every discipline is a part of its scheme to dominate other people. The African American student is often deceived into thinking the education they're receiving is non-political, which is the most political thing of all. All disciplines are related in some way to politics, and all disciplines are in some way related to maintaining the dominance of Eurocentric society. The Eurocentric society is one that is based on death and domination, and those people who are educated in it are educated to bring death and domination upon their people. Therefore, the educated individual who feels their education gives them the right to rob and steal from the average man and lesser educated man, and he thinks because of spending 10 to 20 years in school, he feels he's justified in robbing the people of every last dime they have. And so therefore, you can see even our medical doctors and so forth often having them still the germ of rape and robbery. That's a part of Eurocentric education. So this came with a link. I guess that's the link here, right? Let me see. Let me just double check. This came with a link. I'm supposed to play minute 48, 15. So what we'll do is we'll watch the video and then we'll discuss it.
Hold of the training of our scholars, of our intellectuals, and of other people and of others to the European. Obviously, as Dr. Clark has indicated, the European is not going to move us toward liberation education. In European education, in Egyptian education, we see a reverence for history. We, of course, have mentioned a reverence for ethics and for spirit. This is very, very, very important. I think this is one of the key things that will distinguish an Afrocentric education from that of a Eurocentric education. That is the including into the education of a spiritual component, of an ethical component. As I've said on many occasions, the educated individual today is the most dangerous individual on earth. Educated human beings today, ladies and gentlemen, are twisted and distorted, and they represent the greatest danger to life on earth. How do I say that? When this world ends, and if it ends, it will not be brought to an end by muggers, by rapists, by robbers, by dropouts. It will be brought to an end by PhDs. It will be brought to an end by people who have clipped lawns and little lovely kids and two-car garages. It will be brought to an end by the pillars of society, who go to church, who vote, who are concerned with the Board of Education, but who will also go to work and design bombs and design all kinds of offensive and defensive weapons, doctors who will design germ warfare, botanists who will design biological warfare to destroy crops, psychologists who will design methods of destroying people's minds and so forth, sociologists who will determine how you can destroy a society and its values. So the thing that we must recognize that education in a Eurocentric society is an education for war. And every discipline is a part of that war effort. Every discipline is a part of its scheme to dominate other people. The African American student is often deceived by this type of thing. They're deceived into thinking that the education they're receiving is non-political, which is the most political thing of all. All disciplines are related in some way to politics, and all disciplines are in some way related to maintaining the dominance of Eurocentric society. The Eurocentric society is one that is based on death and domination. And those people who are educated in it are educated to bring death and domination upon other people. Therefore, the educated individual who feels he's educated and his education gives him a right to rob and steal from the average man and the lesser educated man, and he thinks by spending 10 or 20 years in school, he's justified in robbing the people of every last dime they have. And so therefore you can see even our medical doctors and so forth often then have in them still that germ of rape and robbery that is a part of Eurocentric education. The education is very subtle. I told my class the other day, wouldn't it really be so different if you came to this class out of a desire to learn, just out of the pure desire to learn, and that we didn't relate to each other as student and teacher, but as people sharing knowledge and information. And that I don't have to take the role of an authority over you. And that I don't have to motivate your education through fear. So that you do what you are asked to do because you're afraid of getting an F, or because you want to get an A, or because you want to be great one day, or because you want status and all of these other things. Can't you see then at the very center of your education is an education based on fear and false pride and false motivations, so that when you get through, you will be a twisted human being, and therefore you will introject that kind of value upon the population as a whole. So this is why we have the paradox of the educated European not becoming civilized, but more uncivilized, and how ultimately knowledge will become the source of man's destruction. One of the fundamental orientation then of an Afrocentric education is to change this orientation, this fundamental death and rapacious motivation at the root of education. And one of the ways of doing this, of course, is to reintroject the spirit, the ethics, and to reintroject in some way religion and reverence for life in education. People who are educated without spirit, without a reverence for life, are educated to become prostitutes. They then will sell their services to the highest bidders, regardless of how what they will do will be used. And so we have the stupid situation that we are faced with today, where by offering a physicist a corner house and a two-car garage and a full professorship, he will make a bomb that will destroy himself, his children and grandchildren, and the whole of the world.
All right, I wanted to add, because I didn't realize I was reading what Wilson was saying in the video, and I wanted to add a little bit more to that, because he is cooking in that video, by the way. And I know Oni doesn't particularly, well, I shouldn't say that, but I think Oni is not the biggest fan of Dr. Amos Wilson. Oni, educated individual today, is the most dangerous individual on earth. What say you to what Dr. Amos Wilson just said?
Yeah, well, anyway, what I would say is this: science in general, science and technology are what gives human beings the edge in terms of danger, and this has been the case since prehistoric times. You know, a human with a club, a human with a spear. A human in the club had an advantage over, almost the entire animal world. But really, the human that could control fire, who had a club, had great advantages over almost every other beast. Not all of them, obviously, like lions and stuff. But then when you have the spear, you have an advantage. When you have a bow, a lot of people I might not be familiar with this, but the first kingdom the first recorded kingdom in history is Tasseti. That is, the precursor to ancient Egypt. And this kingdom, Tasseti means land of the bow. And what they had was very, very, very skilled archers, which kind of tells you that the first kingdom, the basis for the first kingdom was military might. So and of course the bow, which seems kind of primitive now, but it's a huge leap forward for I would say earth technology. There's no other animal on this planet that can do that realistically. So all that to say that yes, obviously, the better the science, the better the technology, the more dangerous the human being. And that's just what it is. Now, as far as so if that's the claim that educated people are people who are who have more access to better science and therefore they're more dangerous, then sure, I think so. But I don't personally, I don't think we should demonize or we should make it seem like a negative thing to have better technology. Obviously, it's bad for us if we have worse technology. But
Oni,
sorry.
just interject. Sorry. I think the real thing, I don't think is a demonization of education and technology per se. I think it's about the Eurocentric education versus an Afrocentric education. So let's talk about it from that standpoint, I guess.
Yeah, so that's another thing that really irked me one time. I was listening to Amos Wilson lecture, and he was like, in Japanese schools, they the students, because at the time I was kind of the opinion that why are we comparing us to other people kind of thing. But the whole thing was Japanese kids after school, they would clean up the classroom. They would, they're polite to the teacher, blah, blah, blah. They're so good at math. You should see their math scores compared to our math scores. And I was like, okay. I mean, when I first heard it, I was kind of like, why are we comparing, Black people who went through a certain history with the Japanese? But as I got older, I realized, we don't even have schools. Well, at least African Americans don't really have schools like that. Now, obviously, there are private schools, but generally speaking, if you're comparing, you're not comparing the private schools, which are really great performance academies, right? Which the African American private schools can definitely compete on an international level, right? But you're comparing public school African Americans who, again, it's not their country. That you can't compare that to the Japanese who have their own, who have their own nation, so to speak. Now, that's not to say that black people around the world have great schools and only, because that's not true either, right? All the same, what I would say is that, as far as the Afrocentric versus thing, like that's where I think, we have to get a hint of realism, um, one of the examples he used for what was it called Afrocentric school was the education system in ancient Kemet, which is like I mean I'm a Kemet file, I like ancient Egypt and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not. But I think that's one of the problems that we have as a people is that what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like you're in 2020. Well, he's not in 2024, but you're in. I don't remember what year he passed, but maybe like 19 something, right? But you're in 19 something. Ancient Kemet, like legit, um, the last black king of Kemet was like I feel like 500 BC. So it's like it's just like a whole different world, and it's like I understand the sentiment of Sankofa, go back and fetch it and all that kind of stuff, but you're talking about 2,500 years have passed, and of course again I think that it's just a little bit removed from reality, and I get the aspiration, but it's like you're not even as you're talking to Black African Americans, which he was, right? If you're talking to African Americans, they don't even have schools, and that's one of the things that really surprised me. Like back when I was in university, it's like there's legit no independent higher learning, well, except for HBCUs, but there are no, besides from HBCUs, there are no independent higher learning institutions, tertiary education institutions in black communities, particularly like in black hoods. So like if many of us are in the hood, and not all of us are, but if many of us, like if you go to the hood, there's really very limited at independent tertiary level, high science, high technology level educational facilities available to us. So it's just almost like, what are we talking about if we're talking about like if we're being frank, if we're being honest, what are we talking about if we're talking about um uh uh installing like if we're talking about the need for a better educational system? It's like you damn right you need a better educational system because you don't even have schools. So I think as far as realism is concerned, that's really my issue. But I don't want to monopolize the time. Sorry.
No, good stuff on that. Appreciate that. Trigavi262 plus in the chat says he has to head out. He has some things to do. I appreciate you coming through, Trigger. See you next week. That was Oni who just gave his thoughts here. Let's hear from Black Steel on this. Black Steel, what say you?
Yeah, I don't know what Onan was talking about, man. I don't know what Onan was talking about. So, what Amos Wilson is really? I'm an Amos Wilson fan. I have several of his books. Listen to his lectures often. He's really referring to how the Eurocentric education idea makes it's dangerous, right? Because the very idea of Eurocentric education, you see the European as the center of the universe. They see themselves as the focus. And if a black person adopts that idea, right, what happens is that they become willing participants in the European system. So black people, black children, don't see themselves as black children. They see themselves as just dark-skinned white people. And to his point, right, all of the major generals in the army are educated people, master's degrees, doctorate degrees. The people who are building the nukes are the educated ones. But then when black people, what did Garvey say? It's my favorite Garvey quote. He said if the Negro was not careful, he would consume all the poison of modern civilization and die from the effects of it. So when we have these education, it makes us dumb. What Amos Wilson said, don't be educated out of your mind. And that's what you see with a lot of black people who are deep in these institutions of higher learning, without really thinking for themselves, without having any type of Afrocentric culture, you know. They start to internalize and they start to believe this mess, which is kind of why you see, you know, the divestors, right? You see the divestors, they grow up around black white men. They've internalized the white people's beauty standards, and now they can't stand to be around anything black. You see that with black men too. They grow up around white people. You know, they grew up in the school. They read about Columbus and the Middle Ages and all this other stuff, and then that's their worldview, and that makes them dangerous to other African people. Look at Condoleezza Rice. Look at Colin Powell. Look at fucking Kamala Harris. She said she's gonna create the most lethal military. That's not a good thing, guys. That's not a good thing for the Democratic nominee to say they're going to create the most lethal military. When you have war criminals like Dick Cheney endorsing her, that's not a good thing, right? But because we have internalized this Eurocentric education process, we're supporting that. It's amazing to me sometimes when you will see black people supporting the most heinous black people just because they're black. They could be a black person in the Waffen SS, but hey, they're black though, right? And I think that's what Dr. Wilson is talking about, that we have this Eurocentric bent to education. I don't even think it needs having your own schools personally. I think that as a community, African people have to educate our children. We can't just leave it up to our oppressors. When I was in school, I didn't learn anything about black history. We had Martin. We had maybe one thing from MLK Day, and that was really it. We didn't talk about Black history when I was in the '80s. So my knowledge came from my mother. She bought me books. She read to me because she didn't want the school's education to be the only education that I received. And that's a responsibility that I think a lot of parents are shirking, is that they're letting the school be their only source of education. And then when you have a school where most of the teachers are white women, what are they really teaching your children? It can't, you want to learn algebra, you want to learn the Pythagorean theorem, which even in itself, Pythagoras did not originate that theorem. That came from Kemet, but yet we put a Greek person's name on it. So, you know, even that in itself shows the Eurocentric leanings of our education system. So I would just say, as parents, don't shirk your responsibility to educate your children outside of the classroom. That's something that we all have responsibility to do. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Appreciate that, Black Steel. Jose, what say you?
Yes. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was laying on the couch a couple of meters away. This we live in days that it is out in our face, isn't it? This is very clear that educated people are very dangerous. Who is raping language to make nonsense reality, like 91. What is it? What do they call it? It's not sexist. It's that other word. Um, um, what's it called, guys? It's not sexist, man and wife, but it's pronouns, right? All that type of nonsense. From where does it come from? From educated people. Come on, who is deconstructing society? Who is deconstructing the family? It's educated people. Lawyers, quote unquote scientists that made the whole COVID worldwide coup possible. Scientists, educated people. Come on, you know, and I've noticed it for a long time. You know, in university over here, it's called WO, right? Scientific education. And in my younger years, I didn't go to university. My career and my courses and my certificates, etc., was at work. So I stopped with school quite early. But people around me used went to the university, and I had the idea like you're not researching anything. It's like you're on a normal school. You learn something, and then there's a test. And you repeat what you learned the weeks and months before, like how is this a scientific education? You're not at the edge. You're not finding out new things. You're not a pioneer. You're just going to school, a very expensive one. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's a sign of the times, or the times are showing us the signs, and that's it. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Jose. Kofi, you've been listening to a lot of folks talk. You see the chat. What say you to it?
Um, when I hear about education regarding Black people, it's what comes to mind. Put it in perspective, when you read Carter G. Woodson, The Miseducation of the Negro, he says the Black man needs to get two education, one from academia and one for himself. So when it comes to us, yeah, we have to know who knows who they are so we can know what they're doing. So someone like Kamala Harris or whatever and stuff like that, I wouldn't really like put that on her too much, because of the job. I mean, there was an old clip, got the name of that guy who was interviewing Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was like, "Do you want to be president?" He said, "Hell no." Because he understands the job. But when we look at education, I think Dr. Wilson is very true. What he's saying is actually true because it does come from an educated person. You know what I'm saying? Because, the saying in the land of the blind, the man with one eye is the king. And we have people that were like, hey, wow, I know something that they don't know, depending on, it's human nature. You're going to have people who are going to take advantage of other people, right? You're going to have those snake oil salesmen to sell you an idea, a product, or whatever. So yeah, we do gotta look at those people, but at the same time, I'm gonna I'm gonna change it up a little bit. Also, stupid people. You know what I'm saying? There's stupid people in the society right now. You thinking this is the age of information that everyone would know left and right, what's up and down, and what's black and white, and shades of gray. You have stupid people being manipulating other stupid people because all the stupid people are getting together and find that validating other people's stupid ideas. George Carlin said something: "Beware of stupid people in large groups." You know what I'm saying? So yes, it is. So people, like the Oppenheimer, that made the bombs, and people who made like Ebola and all these things that cause harm. You know, yes, those are the ones to be to look out for. But at the same time, stupid people could also come to our demise. So when it comes to education, I like to tread carefully because in this day and age, and I'm going to take it there, in this day and age, we have people. I mean, I have a close friend, you know, smart guy, but we don't believe. I don't know why I'm using the word belief because we're talking about science. We don't believe certain things. And when you have people that don't believe in science and certain things and history, then those are the stupid people. Then we have people that can take advantage of them. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I'm just pretty much, leave it at that. But
when it comes to education, we have to know us as Black people, like who has our interests best in heart, if it's to harm them with their education. But what we have to understand is also be educated so we can see the okie doke. So we can see the okie doke. So I know I was going to bring it to an end, but real quick. So when it comes to science, and when I listen to Saw Netter, and for those you know, man, who Sarah Suit said he is, and what kind of knocked him off his crown. You had people from the Armor Rock Squad or whatever, and they're presenting him. Remember, he's supposed to be representative of Dr. Ben. He was the last one to see Dr. Ben before Dr. Ben passed in the home in the Bronx and all that. And someone gave him like, look, this is a scientific analysis of why you're wrong. This man said, oh, that's the white man science. And I'm like, what? And I'm keep hearing this. So there's no such thing as the white man science. We have to understand science and education is pretty much, especially science, is a tool of understanding the natural world. Right? If you understand the natural world, you understand certain processes and things like that, someone can't tell you different. If you don't know better, right, then and you accept it, right, then it's on you, right? So anyone that knows Sheikh Anta Diop was made Sheikh Anta Diop, just such a legend in his field. He took that same science. That's what I'm talking about. He took that same science you said is the white man science. Took a mummy. This is back in the days when they said the mummy was, ancient Kemet was ruled by white people and Asiatics and stuff like that. Went to Europe, went to France, went to university, took that same thing and said, hey, look, this person shares same. I think it's E1B1A is the DNA signature, and only Africans have that genetic signature, right? And turned the whole world on his head. Right. So we have to understand, for example, we have to understand science as a whole, understand the education, the education as a whole. So we can't see the educated as a danger, because if we're educated, we could see it coming from a mile away. And I'll just end it there.
I appreciate that, Kofi. There's a follow-up question MG2 asks in the chat. I'll put it up again after everyone is gone, just for some clarity's sake. But I guess I got everyone except Buana here. Buana, the educated individual today is the most dangerous individual on earth. What say you to all of it?
That is an exactly right statement, and it's exactly right. And see, we have been taught, within our community, that a dangerous person is what Frank Tukey Williams, the head of the Crips. That's a dangerous person in our community, or a person like Frank Lucas, or all the drug dons in Jamaica, or Papa Doc. These names that is very familiar in our circles. We consider these people as dangerous. But if you was to ask the regular rank and file Black person within our community, they have no idea who Robert Oppenheimer is. Kofi mentioned him earlier. They have no idea who Robert Oppenheimer is and what his contributions to the world is. Have no idea. Matter of fact, one of the highest selling films within this year that gone unnoticed within our community, and they don't understand why this guy is so celebrated, is Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer created the atomic bomb, brother. The atomic bomb that changed the state of affairs within the world. And MGT2 mentioned something specifically. He said that my definition of education is nothing more than mere practical application of information. Okay, so now here goes the practical application of what Oppenheimer did. The United States government took the atomic bomb. They know, most people know about Nagasaki, and they know about the other place in Japan. I forget the name of it now. Hiroshima. They're able to settle countries with the practical application of what Oppenheimer created. A Jewish guy, little people know about. The other person little people know about within our community is somebody called Richard Gatlin, another person. Most people don't know who Richard Gatlin is. Richard Gatlin created the Gatlin gun. And with that invention, he was able to settle large territories in Africa. In particular, if no one ever heard of the Ashanti Wars, the Gatling gun is one of the technologies that was used in that area. And also South Africa, in terms of a lot of the Zulu Wars. A lot of the Zulu Wars. People don't understand how these lands, these vast territories of land, were settled by the Europeans. Well, it's through the creation of these so-called educated people. Most people don't know what Operation Paperclip is. When the United States government decided to get the Nazis, the scientific educated class, Nazis in Germany, and import them into the United States society to work on their space programs and other scientific programs, to build up their military and scientific infrastructure within America. Operation Paperclip. So when Dr. Wilson talks about the educated person is the most, absolutely, and I think that one of the things that we should invest in is scientific education in terms of presenting at least a defense to the rest of the world. To be defense, to put on a show rather than us being slaughtered. The Gatling gun slaughtered a lot of African people. And we are at the threat of what Oppenheimer created with the atomic bomb. God forbid he bombs Africa. They use an atomic bomb to bomb Africa. That's what they use to settle large swaths of territories. Little small little PhD guy in school you would never meet. You call a nerd, cast him aside and say, well, he ain't dangerous. He is the most dangerous person in the room. The gangsters that you probably would have heard of within your community. He could do all of the gangsters you know about within your community. He could do with their little whatever territory you want to even name. More dangerous than El Chapo, more dangerous than Pablo Escobar, Oppenheimer. Most black people don't know who he is. So the science, understanding what the science is in the world, and being a competitor to at least present an alternative. I understand the black mind is intent on creation, intent on building things and producing things and innovating things. But the black mind must also understand in terms of, yes, I create this good product. How can I defend myself against someone taking these things away from me? Yes, I create this genius thing that is beautiful and it's helpful and it helps by people in a very beautiful way. But now I have to use that same mind and initiative to create some sort of defense against people who may want to take these things away from me. That takes scientific and education and know-how too. And this is the world we have to contend with. Yes, the Europeans create a big club, but we must create a big shield to stop the Europeans from taking away the things that we hold dear to our heart, the things that we have been able to produce in the world. And this is the reason why we find ourselves in the situation that we currently reside right now. So I think that Dr. Amos was completely right with some of the things he was saying. The educated individual is a very dangerous individual in terms of how he have practically applied that information and slaughtering and harming other people who don't look like him and conquering the rest of the world. So now we have to create another kind of education in the world that is a shield or a defensive mechanism against people who would choose to rob us and take away from the things that we would have created in the world. But I'll leave it there. Kofi.
All right, well, that was everyone on the panel. So, as Juana alluded to, MG2 asked a question in the chat. I would like to know what everyone's definition of education really is. Juana said, MG2 replied, his definition of education is nothing more than a practical application of information. A little later on, he added, who's the best educated person with a PhD? Sorry, I'm fucking this up. Who's the best educated person with a PhD or a person with survival skills in the middle of World War III? He says self-preservation is the best education anyone can get. So what are you guys, or some of you guys' thoughts on what exactly is educated? In particular, what exactly is African-centered education? Anyone can answer.
Um, I will basically say that everything that facilitates to the needs of a people as far as like survival, right? In that particular context. So your history, your education, academic as far as like your math, your social studies, your sciences, your engineering, your economics, that would be education. That would be African education in for lack of a better word or a manner of speaking. That would be education as far as African totality, in my view. Could you be educated in other fields and things like that? Yes. Could you be educated in European history, Asian history, things like that? Yes. Could you do European so-called ingenuity and things like that? Yes, you can. And I feel that is fine, long as it fulfills the need of African people.
Appreciate that, Kofi. Does anyone else want to answer that question, or shall we move on? All right. Thanks everyone for everything said on that topic. Let's go to the last topic of the night. It should be interesting. I know some panelists might enjoy this one. This one